So hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Tracy Stein. As always, I'm so happy to be here with you. I'm super excited for you to meet my guest today because she's got this incredible initiative. And I myself am so excited to hear more, and I know you will be too. So Keller Hayes, I want to welcome you, and I'll give you a little introduction, but then you'll tell us more about all the great things you want to share. So Keller Hayes is the visionary behind a groundbreaking nonprofit organization, and it's aimed at inspiring young girls to explore careers in the transportation and construction industries. It's amazing. And much like the impact of STEM initiatives, Keller's organization strives to break down barriers and challenge stereotypes, and we love that. She encourages girls to pursue opportunities in fields that are traditionally dominated by men. So we're going to discuss the inspiration behind this endeavor and the creation of this organization. And we're going to talk about the mission of Keller's organization. And I'm going to let her tell you more because she's going to do it better. But Keller, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Thank you for inviting me today. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm so excited to hear all about your work and your journey because it's so interesting. I hadn't even thought about, the construction industry as something that could be welcoming to women so I really want you to tell us more about what you're doing and how you got started.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. I am so just blessed to be working on this because it's so inspiring to see young women hear about something they've never heard about before and go, oh, I could do that. So it's an awesome industry to be in, and it's an awesome time for young women to consider it. I've been working on women's issues for a lifetime, and then I started to coach small businesses in transportation and construction. And at that time, really realized that we had a workforce shortage and that at that time, only 8% of the construction workforce was women. And I'm like, well, here's the answer to that issue. And the other thing that's very interesting to me is that in the general workforce, women make 82 cents on the dollar for comparable work to men. In construction, it's 99 cents. Over a woman's lifetime earning, that can be $400,000 to $1.2 million, depending on her ethnicity. That's a nice chunk of change. And it's an interesting industry. There are so many different careers that are available. And I am so lucky to work with so many individuals that are so welcoming to young women in the industry. We had the general manager of our local transit company sit down, and he told a group of girls from 13 to 23 that if they were ready to work, he was ready to hire them. If they wanted to do internships, they did that as well. If they wanted to do a shadowing day with one of the 38 women that were around the table to support them, they would do that. If they wanted to work there and have them pay for their education, he would do that. Can you imagine hearing that at 13?
I honestly can't, and I think that's what makes what you're doing even more important because I think most of us of a certain age cannot imagine that scenario.
Yes. Every woman in this industry that I talk to says, I wish this program had been around when I was a young girl. And I will also say that I've worked on women's issues for a lifetime and that the women in this industry are so willing to reach back. It's really refreshing because they are like, what can I do to help you? I will do it now. How can I make things better for you than they were for me? And so it's so cool to see. So cool to see.
That's absolutely huge. And, when you're talking about the construction industry and transportation, I'm wondering if you could kind of paint a bit of a picture, because what I would imagine is a lot of women and young girls don't even have a clear sense of what specific jobs that might entail and specifically what type of training might be available to them.
I love that you are all about unpacking possibility because I feel like that's what we're doing. One of the phrases that kind of really gets on my nerves is that anything is possible. And that is true. But it's only possible if you know it exists. If our lens is only 5 inches, how do we know that it's 5 miles? And so we really work with girls about understanding those possibilities and how big they are. I ask girls all the time, I'm like, okay, I'm with transportation and construction girl. What did you think you would learn? And they're like, how to drive a bus and dig a ditch. I'm like, oh, we are going to blow your minds. One of the things I love to start out with is that one of our women who supports the program is a nasal ranger. People are like, what? I'm like, okay, she doesn't wear spandex, but she is the person that decides whether or not a project can proceed. She has gone to school to train her olfactory senses, as well as she has what looks like a megaphone. And she uses those two together to go onto a site and determine if environmentally it's okay to start construction there. And she decides yes or no before that project continues. I mean, it's a great job. She's an amazing person, and she travels. She sets her travel schedule. She's like, yeah, I like to travel a little bit, but not a lot. And that's what she does. I mean, there are so many cool jobs in this industry that girls don't know about. And the other thing is that you asked about training. Training is so broad in this industry. You can start right out of high school with no experience, or you can have 2 PhDs and anywhere in between. I have one woman who owns her own asphalt company that she wants to hire a woman to be a heavy equipment operator. And she said, I'm willing to hire her with no experience as a laborer, which, by the way, a laborer in this industry can make $60K a year. And I will train her for 5 years at no expense to the individual. And after 5 years, she'll be a heavy equipment operator with all the certifications she needs and making $150K a year with no
unbelievable.
debt.
I was going to make a joke and say I'm in the wrong industry. And I may be
surprised how many teachers tell me that.
It's amazing, though.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like, it's not almost like it is. You've tapped into something that has been in front of us for a very long time, right? I don't even know when, modern construction really originated. I mean, I know we've always had some version,
right?
But just the fact that these jobs and training opportunities are there, really, most people do not know that. And I think women know less about it because we're really socialized to move toward other things generally still.
Yes. We originally thought that only the big burly guys could be in construction, that you had to lift a couple 100 pounds. And it's like, well, no, that's not true. In fact, OSHA says you can't lift more than 40. So forget about that. And everywhere you go, they've got inside cranes to lift stuff. That's not an issue. But the other thing is that it's sort of been an assumption, and girls' self-esteem between middle school and high school goes down by 66%, regardless of economic background, geographic background, ethnic background, doesn't matter. And so then, they get in high school, and it's really interesting to me. We take girls out on site visits, and, we'll let them get on equipment. And I mean, something as small as like a 5-foot tall skidster, they'll get on. But they won't get on unless we really encourage them. We're like, look, we got your back on this. Just get on it. Just try it out. That's all we're asking. And they're like, but I've never done it before. I don't know how to do it. I don't want to do it wrong. And my favorite is they're getting on a piece of heavy equipment is, I might break it. I'm like, you're 90 pounds soaking wet. We so got you on this. But they wouldn't get on it in a mixed gender group. It would never happen because, first of all, the boys aren't scared and they'd run to the front. And then the girls would hang back because they'd be like, I don't know how to do it. They must know how to do it because they're eager to get on. So it's really about showing them that, oh, you can do this. We had one 6-year-old with her mother that we took her to an equipment yard. And truly, the skidster, the excavator that we put her on was tiny. I mean, the seat was this wide. Okay. It was tiny. But she was nervous, even with her mom there, right? She's like, oh, I don't know if I can get on it. She kind of hid behind her mom. And her mom's like, no, I'm right here. We got you. She gets on it. And like 10 minutes later, she's like, okay, I can do this. Mom, can we get one for Christmas? And so it was that moment that it just shifted from going, I'm terrified to I could do this. And it's a beautiful moment to see. We see it happen all the time. And it's, I joke that all of the fathers cry because they do. I'll talk to a mother and a father will be the one crying, right? So I talked to this one couple and the father was like, I can't even begin to thank you enough because number one, you've given my daughter idea for a career. So she won't be living in my basement. That's a good thing. He said, but number two, I can't believe the difference in her self-confidence. That just showing her, yes, this is something you never ever considered that you could do. We're going to open your possibilities from a couple of possibilities to hundreds. And he's crying as he's saying it. I have another father who was like, I'm really supporting this because I want to make sure my daughter has a seat at the table.
That's huge.
Yeah, so cool to see.
Keller, I have a question as you're talking because I'm picturing these parents and I'm wondering, are the parents who enroll their daughters in this program also in the construction industry, the transportation industry, or are they, parents doing all kinds of things?
They are parents that are doing all kinds of things. We have had, parents who knew less about the industry than their daughters did. And then we have parents that, one of them may be an engineer and in the industry. We have parents, we had one woman who was a school counselor, and she was like, I didn't know what to expect when I brought my daughter to this, but I can tell you that this exceeded my expectations because for the first time, and her daughter was 15, she's starting to think about her career. And she now knows that this industry is a possibility for her. And she's talking about keeping up her grades and what she needs to do to plan to be in this industry. I mean, her mother was over the moon because she's like, before this career didn't really even occur to her. So, yeah, our parents are all across the board. Yeah.
You must be able to see my mind going a million miles a minute. So I'm trying to pull some threads here and organize my thoughts because I have so many questions for you. Early in the beginning, you mentioned very briefly that in general, women make quite a bit less. Minority women make even less. We don't yet live in a fully equitable society. And there will be people who will be listening who don't want to hear that. But it's true, and there's plenty of data. So it is so interesting to me that professions that I think of as historically very male-dominated, right? And I think if you're in an industry where you're not used to women being there, sometimes there are a lot of growing pains. But it's so interesting that the opportunity for more equitable pay is so much greater, again, in construction and transportation. And can you explain how that came about?
So, I think this is one of those questions where people are like, is there one answer? And there isn't. There are a lot of things that have contributed to it. I think that one is the amazing women in this industry that are willing to reach back. That's huge. I've worked on women's issues for a lifetime. And there was a time years ago when it was hard to reach back because you just had to stay so focused on climbing up that ladder. The other thing is having those openings. There was a period in Colorado for a couple of years that 20% of the workforce was retiring. So that opened up space, and not only opened up space, but meant that we needed to find people to fill those positions. The DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, has certainly had an impact. That has impacted in some ways, it's impacted from the large companies on down. But the other sort of side of that is that the small businesses, I see them doing things for their employees that most people wouldn't even imagine that they would do.
Can you give an
like I
example?
mentioned, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you give an example?
So,
Like something that really blew you away in the best possible way.
one of the things that recently blew me away, and this doesn't focus on the girls, but it focuses on how so many of these small businesses see it as family. Um, Recently, one individual needed to go back to Mexico he'd been here for 20 years, but that whole program where they had to go back to Mexico, live there, and then reapply to be here. He was terrified. He has a family here. He's been here for 20 years. And for many individuals, that's been a long process. He was able to shorten it to about a week. And part of that was because the owner of the company sat down with him and said, we need to prep for this. We need to make sure that you have every record you need. And he said, oh, well, they only said I need this. She said, no, that's not how we're going to do it. We're going to make sure you've got 5 times what they need. We're going to make sure that you've got cash in your pocket in case you need it. And I mean, all of these things she did to prep him. And when he got back, and this was a woman business owner, when he got back, he came into our office and was just crying. He said, I cannot believe how quickly it went for me, and it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't helped me. And that's the kind of in this industry that people don't really see. We have another woman who became, who was interested in being a diesel mechanic. And so one of our companies said, you know what? You can come here and you can be an intern for us, whatever hours work for you. We understand you're going to school, so just let us know ahead of time. We're going to let you work with the head mechanic. She was over the moon. You should see some pictures of her where she's like, here's my hands and here's the smudge. But they were just so willing to be so flexible and to encourage that enthusiasm that she had. And we see those kinds of things all the time in this industry.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
A few moments ago, I know you mentioned that there are jobs available ranging from people who are right out of high school to people who have quite a bit of advanced training. And you mentioned one that honestly I'd never even heard of. Tell me some more about the range of positions that are available to girls and young women.
There are so many jobs available in this industry. And this industry has on-the-job training that really is on-the-job training. Safety is number one in this industry. And so when somebody has on-the-job training, it's not just, hey, go over there and do something. There's training in place. We have one electrician who's trained as an electrician, worked as an electrician, then decided, you know what, I wanted to be an attorney. So now she's an attorney that specializes in construction. And what I tell the girls is, do you understand that if you specialize in something like that as an attorney, you're going to make more money? They're like, excuse me? I'm like, yes. We have one individual who has 2 PhDs in psychology and is now a project engineer for an electrical company. Heavy equipment operators. We have one heavy equipment operator that has her hard hat bedazzled. It's adorable.
I love it.
And there's nothing like seeing a several ton piece of equipment heading down at 35 miles an hour with this little itty bitty thing behind. Obviously, there are architects, there are engineers, there are project managers, there are owners, there are masons, there are drone operators. I mean, one of the things that blows the girls away is that we have demonstrated drones to them and said, do you understand that this drone is tracking how much dirt this company has? And they're like, why would they track dirt? I'm like, well, in this industry, dirt's money. And so they're like, we had no idea you used it for things like that. Virtual reality headsets. There's actually virtual reality programs that you can go inside a building and you can see if anything has been missed underneath the drywall. So you won't see it with your own eyes, but you can with the drone. We have surveying. We have environmental engineers. We have engineers that manage water flow for erosion control, for water testing. I mean, there's so many jobs. There's you can operate a truck. Here's an interesting thing that I learned recently. A lot of that equipment was built for men. So one sand and gravel hauling company built an adaptation for their female driver to be able to reach the pedals. Did you know that in some of the newer trucks now that Ford is implementing pedals that you can move electrically? Because they're like, oh, maybe we want more women to buy our trucks.
Never, ever would have thought of that.
Yeah.
Really opening my eyes, and in the best possible way. It's funny, just an aside, my brother's youngest child is 15 now, and 2 years ago said, I said, what do you think you want to do when you grow up? Thinking, how would you even know, but she said that she wanted to be an electrician. And my first thought was, how do you know? Because there's no one in our immediate family who actually is an electrician. And, some of us are not terribly handy on top of it. So I mean, that's whatever I thought you were going to say. It wasn't that. And what she said is, my friend's father is, and I guess they went to work with him one day or watched him work. And she said, oh, that's really cool. I would love to do that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even know the first step for how she would go about doing that. And it's just so interesting that that now here you are talking about it. And, I'm wondering how young girls and their families find out about your program.
So interesting. You mentioned about an electrician we just went to for our career week for girls. We spent one day at an electrical company, and they have their own apprenticeship programs, and there are other apprenticeship programs that aren't the company owned one, but they have their own. And they start their apprentices in a 4-year program where they work full time. They start with no experience at $20 an hour. They go to school 1 night a week, which they don't pay for. After 4 years, they go up to either $34 to $45 an hour. And
amazing.
No debt, no nothing. And we had one of our girls was in their internship program over the summer. And so that's one of the reasons we started this program, was because they weren't hearing about these jobs. And yet that same electrical company had put a young woman through their program. And they said, usually after somebody graduates, we put them at a smaller job, let them get used to stuff. They said, we went ahead and put her with one of our larger clients right away because she has great soft skills.
Yeah.
And she did a great job. The other thing that, we always think about the disadvantages. One of the advantages one electrician told me was, you know what? I'm smaller and I can get in places they can't. Who knew, right?
So interesting, right? It's so groundbreaking, and it really is forcing everyone really to kind of broaden their perspective and think about things in a different way. And I think that's terrific, and in a more inclusive way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm asking all kinds of questions that may be ones that I've been on your website, but I don't recall. Is this regional, or is this broader than that geographically?
Geographically, right now, it's in the state of Colorado, mostly. We have a few girls that participate from out of state. But our goal is to make it a national program, because nobody else is focusing on this industry and focusing from a young age and able to take them all the way to a job. People ask me all the time, they're like, do you do training? I'm like, no, because there's so much training available in this industry. The trick is getting young women to it, letting them know it even exists. When I ask young girls what they're hearing about in school as careers, I'm so surprised in how few careers they're hearing about. And I know we've overloaded the schools with a lot of stuff, but I really believe girls need hundreds of options instead of one or two. I mean, I'll ask girls and they'll go, I heard about this one, or I heard about these two. And I'm like, well, then hang on, because we're going to blow your minds.
Really so amazing and so important. I'm so excited that you're here talking about this because I wouldn't have even known to go look for it.
Right. Yeah.
I know that you talk about 3 different young girls specifically who are really important examples of what this work has opened up for them. And I don't know if you want to talk about any one or all 3 of them.
Sure. So again, you can start right out of high school or you can have 2 PhDs. We have one young woman who went through our Career Week for Girls. And after that, she said, you have inspired me to do more than I thought I could in this industry. And she was a young woman who loves rocks. And so when other girls were like getting a new doll, she was like, oh, I got new rocks. And so she went to a rock museum and somebody said to her, do you know that could be a career? She's like, no. She came to our program and she then went to the Colorado School of Mines. We helped her with her application. She got a 4-year scholarship to Colorado School of Mines, the Florence Caldwell Achievement Scholarship.
Amazing.
And her goal was to be a geological engineer on Mars. I'm like, yes, we need to inspire young women to dream big, to know about the possibilities.
What a life-changing, series of events and opportunities. I mean, truly life-changing.
Yes. We had another young woman who, her junior year in high school, she's like, Keller, you have no idea how stressed I was about what am I going to do for a career. And the stress that high schoolers are going through about that, I'm so glad I didn't have that amount of stress. And so she went to her math teacher because she was good in math. And she said, I'm looking for a career. And her math teacher said, why don't you be a math professor? And her response was, why don't I not? She said, that didn't appeal to her at all. And so her shop teacher had gotten a flyer that was about our Career Week for Girls. And it was about that year's Career Week for Girls. She went through the program. She said, yeah, I'm going to give this a shot. She came out of that program and said, I'm going to go into construction management. Like, all right, then. She did several shadowing days. And then the next spring, I talked to one of the companies that she had gone to for Career Week for Girls. And they said, man, we would love to hire her as an intern. And so I gave her a call. I said, look, all you have to do is give them a call. She's like, Keller, I really appreciate this. I don't want to offend you or insult you or make you feel bad or anything. But now that I know what I'm going to do, I need to earn money to go to school. I said, oh, Elena, you're going to make more money as an intern in this industry than you are as a lifeguard. She's like, what? Most girls think internships are only free. They start at $20 in this industry. That's so she went to 2 summer internships with that company. And then she started her college career. And she said, Keller, you won't believe it. She said, I'm still only one of a few girls in my class. She said, but there are guys here whose families are in construction. But because of the experience that I have from transportation and construction girl, I'm ahead of them. And as her father likes to say, she graduated under budget and ahead of schedule and at the top of her class.
That's just amazing.
And now she's working as a project engineer in Salt Lake City, Utah, because she said, I'd never been out of Colorado. I wanted to try something different. And she said, by the way, in Salt Lake City, I'm closer to the slopes and I can do more snowboarding. I'm like, those are 2 excellent reasons.
That is so great.
Yeah.
As you're talking, I'm really just thinking, I had a friend of mine on my most recent episode, and he is a landscape designer, but he works for a very large, very significant construction company in New York City. And so they do massive jobs. But what he does is not only design the landscapes for these projects, but his work abuts work with people who are managing water, um, you know, energy production, everything. There's nothing almost that construction doesn't abut in some way. That, even people who think that what they do is very far removed, it sounds like what you're saying is there are so many things that are either directly related or very adjacent. And I'm just very struck by that.
Absolutely. One of the things that is very cool to see is that individuals who work in this industry, say they worked on that bridge or they worked on that road, they'll go, do you see? That's my bridge. I did that. There's a totally huge sense of pride in that. And knowing that it's something that is substantial and is going to be there for years. So, yeah.
Huge. Trying to think of there's so many things to ask you. I know that there are many related programs connected to what you're doing. So career weeks, a coloring book.
Yes.
Tell me about some of the other things.
I did a search for women in non-traditional careers. And what I found was that people would highlight engineers or architects, which are awesome careers, but they didn't highlight any of the others that are in this industry. So we went on a mission to get videos of women in the industry, and it's available 24/7. It's our Superstar Women in Transportation and Construction video gallery. And we now have 74 videos in that gallery. And it's about women talking about what their career is, how they got into it, and what their recommendations would be to young women. And, that whole see it to be it, to see a woman talking about how she became an electrician or how she became a project manager or superintendent, all of that's really powerful. One of the young women that we interacted with was 9 years old. And she came to Transportation and Construction Girl Day with her mother. And we videotaped the two of them afterwards. And she said, I can't believe you can go somewhere for a day and come back and your whole world is changed.
Huge.
That was, for her, that was unpacking possibility. Her
100%.
mother on the same video was crying. And she said, I cannot believe how welcomed my daughter was by these adults in the industry at the day. She said, and I cannot believe how much it really encouraged my daughter to think about what her possibilities are in this industry. And I know that she's going to take a bigger place in the world because of that. What parent doesn't want to hear that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Keller, I wanted to touch base on something you said earlier in our conversation, because I imagine that parents might have this question. But, you're talking about what people imagine about construction sites and issues of safety. Now, I know you mentioned OSHA and regulations with OSHA. I know what that is, but I don't know if our listeners do, all of them. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that and about safety in the workplace for, I think a lot of people don't imagine their young girls in a place where there is so much heavy machinery and so forth.
Yeah, safety, as we say, is job number one in this industry. And, there are things that people don't even know. And that's like every morning there's a safety briefing. Regardless of the size of the company, every morning there's a safety briefing just to make sure that everybody knows what's going on that day on that job and what people might need to be prepared for. OSHA is a federal agency that puts down different safety rules that every company has to abide by. I mean, even things like PPE, which is personal protective equipment. I mean, we have safety vests, we have safety glasses, we have hard hats, we have gloves. You will always see that safety equipment in place. And it's just, it's sort of like if you get up, you know that safety is part of that day. It just is. And I don't know any other industry that pays that much attention to it. I mean, it's just ingrained in it. It's like, okay, well, this is the goal for the day, but if you haven't implemented safety, then we have to back up because we can't start until that happens.
Yeah, I mean, even just you're talking about that one job, and I forget the title, but where someone literally is using their nose to determine if it smells like this site is okay to proceed.
Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of people don't even think about the amount of environmental that goes into construction, because that was environmental. We do water testing. Yeah. We, whenever we're doing digging for electrical utilities, there's all kinds of permits and maps, and as well as we use like infrared to detect anything that maybe there's utilities that were there before people, the municipalities started to map them. So we use infrared. I mean, it's like, what else can we do to be safe? And yeah, we do that all the time. Environmental is a huge impact. Concrete is one of the most environmentally recycled products on the planet. I mean, it's really amazing how much environmental we are concerned with about our industry, about the work, and about the planet. Yeah. Which most people don't think about.
No, and it's so important. And it's what you're describing is so much more complex and it sounds very well thought out. That doesn't really capture it, but you know what I mean. Yeah. It sounds like you have put so much thought into everything in terms of how you not only do outreach, but the education you're providing to these young girls and young women and their families. I'm learning so much just in the brief time we've been speaking, just about things like salaries and benefits and paid training and the vast range of opportunities. I'm wondering, are there things that we have not yet covered, but that we should?
I think that one of the things that is so impactful to me, that I see it happen with the other women in this industry as well, is that reaching back is so important. I mean, we talk about, we're not just changing lives, we're changing lifetimes, because that impact on a woman's career. I had one woman tell me that, and she was a carpenter. She said, you know what, when I got divorced, I'm not going to deny it. It sucked. But I never had to worry if I was going to lose my house or if I could take care of my kids. I think that kind of freedom we owed everybody, and especially women. And I had one young woman last year in our career week for girls who told me, after I asked her, what's the most important thing you learned this week? She said, I didn't know a woman could make a good living.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, okay, this is where I start to cry.
Yeah.
But this is where I know that what we're doing is really, really important. We need to let girls know about these options and possibilities.
100%. And I'm going to try and be thoughtful in how I say this. And, it's impossible to offend absolutely no one. So I'm not going to set that as my goal.
Okay.
They're probably not listening to this podcast if they'll find this offensive, though. But, we're in an era where I've been blown away in the worst possible way by what some people are probably have been feeling for a long time and have been saying out loud. So about feeling like women need to go back to a time where they had fewer choices, fewer opportunities, fewer rights. And there are definitely people out there. I'm hoping not as many as, social media and the news can make it seem like, but who want to shrink our world and make us more dependent and go backwards in a way that I don't think is healthy.
Right.
Thankfully, I know that there are also quite a large number, and I'm assuming the larger number of people see that women are people and have incredible things to offer and deserve access to opportunities that can benefit them and benefit the collective, right? When we all bring our skills and talents to the larger world, everybody benefits, I think.
Yes.
And, I think it's important that we create opportunities where maybe there weren't before. And, there were a few times during, you describing the work you're doing where I too felt a little like, oh, I might cry because it is so life-changing, right? I mean, what I've learned in the last 25 minutes or so has opened my eyes to things I never thought about. And I'm just imagining these young girls enrolling these programs, getting access to this training and knowing that they can take care of themselves and their families and do things that utilize their talents and feed their souls in a way that, again, I wouldn't have thought of before. What a wonderful thing.
Yes, absolutely. You said that beautifully.
It was a little long-winded, but you know what I meant. But I think it's amazing that you're doing this. And I am pleasantly surprised, I'm going to admit, that, something that I have assumed was a male-dominated industry, which it historically has been, but that has been welcoming to young women. So important. How can people support the work that you are doing? I think that's a good question.
There are so many ways that people can support it. One is they can go to our website. They can download the coloring book. They can go to our YouTube site, which is Transportation and Construction Girl, and watch the videos of the women in this industry. They can see videos of Transportation and Construction Girl Day and Career Week for Girls. They can also contact me. I am really wanting to take this across the country, and I'm looking for individuals who believe that girls should have those kinds of opportunities and want to see it open up in this industry. I mean, we are all about providing economic sustainability and financially and emotionally rewarding careers, because every bit of research that you look at shows that companies are more successful when they do that. And so any of that is helpful to us, absolutely. And, the other thing is just to take this to any young woman. Again, those are two resources that they can use anywhere. And it is amazing how that one thing can change. I remember talking to one individual, and he was like, how can one day make a difference? I'm like, you don't understand. It can totally change your life. And so that one little pebble in the lake is what's going to change things. And we've started to see those ripples happen. And now, I'm just looking for other people to understand more about it. And any support is helpful. Reach out to me. Be great.
Amazing. So I will put your website and your YouTube channel in the show notes. But do you want to say your website just for anybody listening who maybe isn't looking at their phones? Maybe they're driving.
It is constructiongirl.org.
Okay,
that is our
constructiongirl.org.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Keller, thank you so much. This has been so enlightening. I'm so glad you came on the show. I've learned so much, and I can't wait for all of the young girls and young women that will continue learning from you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really, really appreciate that. And I'm so glad that there's an awesome woman out there who's unpacking possibilities for everyone. So
Thank
thank you.
Likewise. This has been another episode of Unpacking Possibility. If you enjoyed the show, and I know you did, please remember to like, share, follow, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. And of course, as always, until next time, be well.